Hello everybody, and welcome to a resonance review. Today we're covering the Campfire Audio Astrolith. This is Campfire Audio's planar magnetic flagship IM featuring two drivers. It has a 6mm micro driver and a 14mm full-sized planar driver. This earphone retails for about $2,200 on Campfire Audio's website and is really intended for people who really treat audio as though money is no object. So I'd like to get that out of the way and say that if you're somebody who usually spends, $50, $100, maybe even $350, $500, you're probably not the intended audience for this earphone. That said, I think it's a great earphone, and you're probably going to be interested in learning about what these brands can do at the pinnacle of their audio lineups. So with that, let's get into it. So the Astrolith, as I mentioned, is a two planar driver earphone. And something that it does that most other planar drivers don't do or don't do very well is it has a V-shaped sound signature. Now, what does that mean? For those uninitiated, V-shaped sound signature is one where there is a pronounced bass and a pronounced treble, with the mid-range being somewhat less emphasized in between them. So if you were to visualize it on a frequency response graph, the bass would be higher, treble would be higher, slopes down to the mid-range, forms a rough V shape. So basically all mainstream exciting, fun earphones are tuned with some variation of V-shaped tuning, and that's just because it seems like most people really do like bass and treble. So the Astrolith, as I mentioned, actually has a uniquely good implementation of a V-shaped sound signature on a planar driver earphone. And it's more than just a novelty, right? The first earphone to do something is impressive, but if it's sort of just a gimmick or, it's only impressive because it's the first one to do it, that's not really a justification for a very, very expensive price. Thankfully, the Astrolith's tuning is not simply a novelty, it's not a gimmick, it's the real deal. So let me get you a little bit more detail on that front. So it's a gently V-shaped sound signature, meaning it has a pronounced bass, but it's not fully leaning into bass, and it has a bright treble that sort of carries up into the upper mid-range and just remains energetic all the way throughout, all the way up to the limit of my hearing. Its mid-range is slightly recessed, but it has a spike in the upper mid-range that sort of helps with vocal intelligibility and instrumental separation. And it has some subtle warmth in the lower mid-range that helps fill out body. To break it down even further, so to give you some specifics about treble. So when it comes to planar driver earphones, it's really no exaggeration to say that many enthusiasts and audiophiles and maybe even planar magnetic fans define planar magnetic earphones by their ability to leverage a very resolving, fast, quick, and analytical treble. The Astrolith does have that, but it has it in a way that I think many other earphones could really learn from. Because, the flip side of planar drivers having that reputation is that people also kind of give them a pass for having treble that, with any other type of driver, they would consider to be, poorly tuned. And a lot of the times this gets swept under the rug with the term planar timber. Planar timber is not real. I'd like to get that out of the way. There is nothing that planar drivers have specifically that forces them to sound a certain way. It's just that most planar drivers used in these earphones are going to be the same planar driver families. So the drivers themselves are often very, very similar, and because of how new these small and micro planar drivers are, not a lot of brands have experience tuning them in a way that makes them sound more varied or more refined. So the pattern becomes, you have a lot of planar drivers, they all have very similar sound, and then people associate the common flaws with those sounds, with the driver itself. Again, correlation does not equal causation in this case. There's no such thing as planar timber. And I think the Astrolith is a good example of that. Yes, it's bright. Yes, it's very, very energetic in the treble, but it does not have traditional sibilance the way that you might find with other planar magnetic IMs. And that is a major plus. So if you are sensitive to traditional sibilance, you won't really have too much of an issue with the Astrolith. Now, it does have its moments where it does peak out and become a little bit too hot, but even for my test tracks, it's not particularly obvious when it's going to come in. So I have a set of tracks that I test, and those usually highlight flaws with sibilance when it comes to earphones. The Astrolith passed almost all of those with flying colors. It didn't really become sharp or hot in a way that I was expecting. Now, it did have its moments, like I said, and those moments were really in spots that I'd never really heard many other earphones become hot or peaky, and that was interesting. But I was able to kind of mellow that out a little bit by switching to foam ear tips. That actually helped a lot. And then kind of just adjusting fit. So, where the earphone sits in your ears does determine some of the ways that the sound refracts inside your inner ear. And while for most earphones, it's not really going to make a huge difference, for some of them there are subtle changes in effect based on the depth that you sit them on in your inner ear. So if you do want to try the Astrolith and you do experience those peaks, I recommend you experiment with ear tips. Foam worked for me. It may not work for you. There may be silicone ear tips that actually do work better for kind of eliminating that treble peak. It's going to depend on your inner ear anatomy. So yeah, that's all I really have to say regarding planar timbre and peakiness and sharpness. Now I'd like to discuss some of the other aspects of the Astrolith treble, which are actually positive. So the Astrolith is very fast, very resolving. It has excellent transient response time. You're going to get a lot of texture, resolution, and layering out of the Astrolith. It's able to produce air while still sounding warm because of that lower mid-range. And it has an extreme amount of control, which means it's not really ever going to become overblown and bleed into the upper mid-range, meaning you get that excellent sense of separation and airiness. When you have treble-bound details, like speculars in the background or maybe, string instrumentation, the Astrolith does a great job of actually soundstaging those and layering them independently, especially if you have complex and or contrasting textures in the treble. The Astrolith captures a lot of that. It brings it to the foreground, and you can actually hear and play around with your focus and follow instrumentation throughout the tracks. It very much is the embodiment of what I would expect from a flagship product when it comes to treble. And I don't really want to drone on about treble too much, so I think you get the idea. I'd like to talk now about mid-range. So the Astrolith mid-range, like I mentioned, is warm, but it's not thick or heavy. It's not really claustrophobic either. So its mid-range's warmth is a subtle implementation designed to add weight and body and substance to instrumentation, again, without it feeling overwhelming or heavy or overweight or anything like that. So the Astrolith's mid-range is essentially immune in my testing to the treble bleed on the upper mid-range and bass bleed on the lower mid-range. It's very distinct, much like the treble. It is very fast, very precise. It oozes with intention, right? So sometimes you'll listen to an earphone and it might just feel like it's kind of wandering or kind of just, it doesn't feel like it's on its toes. The Astrolith's mid-range really does. It's always standing at attention. It's concise, and I really do appreciate that. I've mentioned trebles, the trebles texture. There's a lot of texture. I would say actually probably the majority of texture coming from the mid-range. And when you have an earphone like this that has such a well-tuned lower mid-range warmth, it's got such a well-designed upper mid-range spike. It's just a very cohesive display of instrumentation and vocals. And what you're going to get is extreme vocal intelligibility, meaning you can understand your vocals with a great degree of clarity. You can pick up inflection. You can pick up subtleties in breathing even. You can get, changes in, tone and extreme micro details. And you also get that instrumental richness combined with instrumental, projection. So your instruments aren't really just kind of playing through the speakers. You actually do get more of a three-dimensional and real sense of the instruments existing in the track itself. And that is kind of an addicting quality of the Astrolith. Not every earphone can pull it off. Even when you move up into the flagship range, it's an uncommon trait. And it's awesome that the Astrolith was actually able to pull that off. Moving on to bass. So as I mentioned, the Astrolith is a V-shaped sound signature earphone. That means it does have an emphasized bass relative to its mid-range. And that is true. I wasn't lying or exaggerating on that. But it's not a bass head earphone. A lot of the times you can get V-shaped earphones that are bass head earphones, but they have much more bass than the Astrolith does. And you'll find when you listen to it that you get thump, you can get punch, you can get rumble, you can get all of that good stuff the way that you might get it from a more toned down dynamic driver earphone. It's kind of like that, where you do get the bass's presence, you get thump, you get rumble, but it's not going to shake your eardrums. It really wasn't designed that way, it wasn't tuned for that. It's not even trying to approach those listeners with its sound signature. So when you're listening to electronic music, kind of like, let's say, Gold Dust, that's a song that if you've ever read my written reviews, you'll see I reference all the time. That features something that I like to call wet bass, which is a nice pairing on one bass element of, mid bass, sculpting down into sub bass on a single bass element. And that requires a cohesive bass tuning. And the Astrolith does that very well. It really nails the texture and tone of those elements. But my personal preference would be that we really had like maybe 1 or 2 decibels more of emphasis. My preferences really lie more in the like Campfire Audio Cascara range of bass, where it's very bombastic. This is a little bit more subdued, more professional, and it's really more for people who would like to experience the full sonic spectrum instead of maybe trading some of that analysis and some of that, like I mentioned, professionalism for a little bit more fun, which again is my preference. So I do think that the Astrolith could, for me, benefit from a little bit more bass. I don't really think that people who are chasing flagship level performance necessarily would agree with me on that. But if you align with me on the Cascara, then you'll probably align with me on the Astrolith. So moving on to build quality and construction. So I really like the way Campfire Audio builds their earphones. That's no surprise. I've mentioned a bunch of times in my written reviews. And the Astrolith is no exception. So the actual main body of the Astrolith shells is made out of a 3D printed resin. Inside of that, you actually have, the 3D printed acoustic cavities that Campfire uses for tuning. They don't use filters or dampers or anything like that. It's all completely tuned using the interior and the geometry of the interior, which I find to be very cool. The faceplate of the earphone is made out of stainless steel. I'm pretty sure this is CNC'd. It's very nice. I really like the implementation there. There is a vent on the front face. There's one vent across the whole earphone. And I like that a lot. A lot of times when you get planar earphones or planar hybrids or bone conduction drivers, brands will put the filters on the top of the shell where your fingers touch when you take them in and out. It's also a spot where you're more likely to get moisture from the environment. So if it's raining or misting or whatever, that's where sweat goes. And that's a terrible place for a vent. You get lots of organic material and moisture intrusion. It's terrible. Campfire really did a great job of placing this vent. I don't know if they were intending to enhance the design in this way, but it works very nicely nonetheless. You have MMCX detachable cables. So at the top of the earphone, you'll see that there's this little bump. Inside of that is the MMCX socket. You have the nozzles, which are actually just one large CNC piece that actually sits inside of the, it sits flush and then goes inside of the shell. That's stainless steel as well. So stainless steel nozzles, that's a major plus. I would not spend this much on an earphone if it had plastic nozzles. They crack, and it's really just not worth the hassle over time. I mean, when you're 3 or 4 years into ownership, especially if you use it every day, plastic nozzles really just don't stand the test of time compared to stainless steel or aluminum or a similar metal. So I'm really glad that they went with those. The cables, you can see this gorgeous cable right here. These are the TimeStream metal cables. I have the 3.5 millimeter one attached right now. Inside the box, you're also going to get a 4.4 millimeter detachable cable, so you can swap those as you see fit. You know, these are silver-plated copper. They're flat braided, if you can see there. They're very easy to coil. They're very comfortable. They don't make the backs of my ears itch. They have no body, so when you go and you wrap them really tight, if you let go, they're not really going to stay and follow that shape for very long. They're very easy to get to go back to normal. They're very pliable. They have minimal microphonics. I really like these cables. I like them so much that I've actually bought more cables of these from Campfire Audio to use with my other earphones. That's how good they are. So I strongly recommend that even if you are not interested in the Astrolith, if you're in the market for an MMCX cable, take a look at the TimeStream metal cables. They are sold separately on Campfire Audio's website. I absolutely love them. Okay, so let's talk power and pairing. The technical specifications for this are that it has an impedance of 8.2 ohms, which is actually pretty low, and a sensitivity of 94 decibels per milliwatt. So you have this planar-ish thing where you end up with a fairly low impedance paired with also a very low sensitivity. In practice, this manifests itself as the Astrolith not actually being very hard to drive. It is going to be a little bit more power intensive than, let's say, an all-balanced armature driver earphone. But there are many hybrids and tribrids or quadbrids with all of these exotic different drivers, and those are much more difficult to drive usually than the Astrolith. So if you have a phone with a very good onboard DAC amp combo, let's say like you have one of the LG V20, 30, 40s, etc., those definitely can drive this, even on low gain. If you have any reasonably competent dongle, that can drive it. I can drive this off of the Meze Alba dongle, which was designed for an earphone that has noticeably higher sensitivity. It's totally fine, right? I generally like to use mine with low gain sources that are really meant for more sensitive earphones. I've tried to use it with some of my higher power sources, and really the Astrolith does pick up a lot of that background hiss. So try and use sources with the blackest background you can get. That's my recommendation there. I don't think you need to really spend too much on this one. It's not too crazy for power requirements. All right, so as for accessories. For accessories, we have, as I mentioned, we have the two TimeStream metal cables, a 3.5 millimeter and a 4.4 millimeter. You have a handmade leather dimensional folding wallet. You have the Breezy Bag Junior, which is a compact mesh zipper case. Well, it's really more of a pouch. You have the Breezy Bag Micro, which is a 2-pocket pouch that you put each of the earphones in, and it protects them. I actually like that quite a bit. You get the microfiber cleaning cloth, cleaning tool. You have a Campfire Audio lapel pin, which is very nice. And you get 6 pairs of silicone ear tips and 1 pair of foam ear tips. Well, really I should say you get 1 set of foam ear tips, so 3 pairs. So I think that Campfire Audio wants to be generous with their accessory package, particularly when it comes to these higher end models. But a critique and a criticism that I consistently have is that it is incomplete without a hard carrying case. When you are selling a $2,200 earphone, $2,200, I think you owe your customers a case that will protect the thing that they have purchased. If this was a $50 or $100, maybe even $150 earphone, I might understand, especially if you're really pushing the limits of your budget. $2,200. I think that there should have been one in the box. The Clara, which is a newer earphone, I believe that does come with a hard carrying case, and I think it's actually $200 cheaper than the Astrolith. There are older Campfire Audio products that all came with hard carrying cases, with zippers. Some of them had wool interiors. The Atlas, I believe, had one. I think there are multiple versions of the Andromeda that had it, and again, all of those are cheaper than the Astrolith. I don't know why Campfire Audio switched away from those and went to the Breezy bag, but I'm really hoping that they revise the Astrolith's accessory package to include one. I think that would make this a much better experience for customers. And I really don't like the fact that after dropping $2,200, I got to go to Amazon and I have to buy a Pelican 1010 to protect my earphones. I mean, this thing is drop proof, it's waterproof, it will protect the earphones from crushing forces, which actually is my biggest criticism of the baggies. So if I put my Astrolith in this, and then I throw it into my backpack with, let's say big books and a heavy laptop, it'll be okay. With the Breezy Bag Junior or the Dimensional folding wallet, it won't be. And in fact, I wouldn't ever even want to put the leather folding wallet, while we're on the subject, is so nice that I wouldn't even want to use it in that way. It's very premium feeling and it's soft and supple. I love to have the feeling of it in my hands. But even that, like after putting it in the wallet, I don't want to just throw the wallet in a loose into a bag. That feels bad. So please, Campfire, revise this. I think that one of your upcoming earphones does actually have a hard carrying case. Awesome. Please revise the Astrolith's accessory package. We would all appreciate it. So thank you very much on that front. As for the accessories that do come in, I actually do like them. I know I've criticized Campfire a lot here, but the stuff that they do include actually is quality. You can feel it in the hands. There's thoughtfulness to it, particularly when it comes to the Breezy Micro, which is this. So this is a 2-chamber, little pouch, and it's designed for you to actually go and put the earphone inside of the pouch, and then this protects the earphones from banging into each other when they're inside of the case, which is awesome. If you have ever owned one of Campfire Audio's older aluminum shells, then you'll know that if you just put them in a case together and you don't actually put them in a pouch, they're going to bang into each other and they're going to cut each other and they're going to look terrible, and nobody wants that. They start out looking so good that you don't really want that. I'm glad that this is included. I think Campfire uses them in pretty much every product, and I am really happy about that. Very practical, and I wish that more brands actually did this. So great on that. The ear tips are ear tips, so I do like the silicone ear tips. They're very comfortable. I use them on my Cascara, but for the Astrolith, I prefer using foam. Now, it's good that they include the foam. I'm grateful, but the Campfire Audio Marshmallow foam ear tips I think are too hard and they're too stiff. So this means that while they do last a long time, they don't really need to be replaced very often. They're not very comfortable, and in my ear, they don't seal very well, which is kind of what I would associate the primary benefit of foam ear tips actually being. So for you, they might work. For me, they don't work. I would rather use Comply or one of those other, third-party ear tips. So that's that. And a new section that I'm starting to talk about is warranty and repair. For a $2,200 earphone, warranty and repair matters a lot. And as earphones keep getting more and more expensive, something that does not usually improve in tandem with that is, again, warranty and repair programs. So I'd like to highlight Campfire Audio's commitment to warranty and repair. So the Astrolith comes with a 2-year warranty, and then if it is damaged outside of warranty or damaged in a way that is not covered by the warranty, they do offer a fair repair program. I spoke to somebody at Campfire Audio, and he estimated that the repairs that they normally do go between $50 and $150 US. So if you're buying a $200 earphone, that kind of sucks, 150 bucks. But if you're buying a $2,200 earphone, $150 is a drop in the bucket. So that's awesome. I wish more brands stuck to a system like this. I know that Advanced Acoustic Works, AAW, they also have a flat fee for repair, which is awesome. And they repair lots of their earphones, even the older ones. Campfire Audio does the same thing. I want to see more of that. So that's awesome. Moving on to comparisons. I'm going to be a little bit more brief here. If you'd like to read the full-length comparison, you can do so in the written review, which is on resonancereviews.com. So starting with the Campfire Audio Andromeda. So the 2019 version is the one that I have. It's fairly similar to a number of the other revisions. But I really like the Andromeda's warmth and its smoothness. And that's something that it does, I would say, maybe a little bit better than the Astrolith. It's very smooth, very warm, very consistent, very mellow, and it does that while still maintaining a high degree of detail retrieval and intelligibility. And if you have ever heard it, you'll know that's what it's famous for. So compared to the Astrolith, it has much less bass. It has a more linear mid-range that is warmer, and it has a much more tame and less bright treble that does have a very similar amount of extension, although maybe less extreme in the upper treble. So they have, I'd say broadly speaking, similar levels of detail retrieval. I think that the Astrolith pulls out details a lot easier just because of the nature of its brighter sound signature, and the Astrolith, I would say, might have a more balanced sound signature to most people simply because it follows that, that gentle V-shaped frequency response. Most people, I think, will also appreciate the Astrolith's increased amount of bass, particularly when it comes to impact and texture. The Astrolith just does it way better. There's no competition there. And for the second and final comparison I'd like to make is the ClearTunes Monitors DaVinci X. This is a 10-bound Star Merchant Driver flagship from ClearTune Monitors. It's from 2018, but I think it holds up. It stands the test of time. It's still for sale today, actually. That's how good it is. They haven't needed to revise it. Very impressive. This is a more neutral earphone. It's bright, but not as bright as the Astrolith, and its aim is to be as instrumentally expressive as possible without necessarily being, bright or bassy or fun. It's more of like, I would say, a surgical instrument that also wants to be comfortable. A lot of these very sterile earphones aren't very comfortable sound-wise. The DaVinci X is very comfortable, and that's something that I think it does a little bit better than the Astrolith. It remains very easy to listen to throughout. It's not exhausting, and it doesn't even have one little spike or pop or hotness here or there. It's really the most mellow earphone I have ever heard that can produce so much detail. So the DaVinci X really does have, a nice advantage there. Now, something that the Astrolith does a lot better is remaining visceral and engaging. You're kind of just listening to music with the DaVinci X. You're more experiencing it with the Astrolith. And it's definitely not, I would say, the most engaging earphone. I think that the Campfire Audio trifecta kind of just has that crown, is going to keep it. But again, compared to the DaVinci X, it's much more engaging. That comes from its bass, and it comes from the extra energy in the treble. It's also got a little bit of extra warmth, which really helps it feel, less of an analytical tool and more of something for you to really just enjoy yourself. I think there's something to appreciate on both sides there. I don't think that it's fair to make somebody choose between these two, right? I think that one person can have both in their collection and appreciate both of them for what they bring to the table. When it comes to flagships, you're way past the question of, is it good or bad, right? We're way past the point of diminishing returns. Now it's all about style and evoking that maximum expression of the tuner's vision. And you really do get that with both of these. So I think they're better partners than they are competitors. All right, and moving on to the conclusion. So the Astrolith brings a unique blend of, the planar side advantages like speed, dexterity, and analytical levels of precision to a previously untapped V-shaped market in the planar segment. Now, it's not the only V-shaped, planar driver, but it is, I would say, among the best or perhaps even the best tuned one. It does this all while having an exceptional build quality. It has fantastic cables. It has a pretty wide variety of accessories included in the box, and they all feel very high quality. While I do want Campfire to go back and revise this accessory package to include a hard carrying case, that's something that you can rectify for $15. It should have been in the box. Thankfully, it's not a bank buster to have to go to Amazon and buy a Pelican 1010. So it's not a deal breaker to me, and hopefully it's not a deal breaker to you either. So, while I do generally recommend this to the audience that it is intended for, I'd like to specify who that audience is, right? So first and foremost, it's people who don't mind spending $2,200 on an earphone. If you're chasing peak audio performance, in this case, you're gonna have to pay for it. So if you are cost sensitive, this is not for you. If you're a Planar driver enthusiast, you're already going to be used to the occasional, hotness or peak, and maybe you don't even mind it. Maybe you like treble, and maybe you think that sounds great. If you do, this is for you. If you are a audiophile and you're craving that gentle V-shaped sound signature that doesn't have an overblown bass and is extremely precise, extremely resolving, extremely textured, the Astrolith is for you. Now, if you're seeking reference sound, Astrolith is not going to work for you. If you're sensitive to upper treble or peaks in the mid-range, the Astrolith is not going to be for you. If you are cost sensitive, as I mentioned, the Astrolith is not for you. If you have limited options for source pairings where you mostly have high power gear, high gain gear, the Astrolith is going to have that background hiss. That might bother you. If you're a bass head, the Astrolith is not for you. It's not going to produce enough bass. So, really, who this is intended for, you're going to love it. If you're in those other camps, I would steer clear, save your $2,200, spend it on something else. Campfire Audio even has many other earphones with a wide variety of sound signatures that I'm sure you'll love. Even if you don't go with Campfire Audio, I have reviewed a ton of earphones, most of which are still for sale, and you can find all of those at resonancereviews.com. That's my full-length written reviews. Obviously, I have some older video reviews on my YouTube channel, but the fastest way to get the most up-to-date reviews is going to be resonancereviews.com. And with that, I'd like to thank you for watching my second ever video review. Like I said in my first one, production is kind of scuffed. I accept that. I'm working on production quality, editing, scripting, presentation, things like that. So I appreciate your patience and understanding as I work through those problems and build the requisite skills to get better. So with that, as always, happy listening.